An elder man discovers a sealed hatch beneath his new garden and opens it to find an underground chamber where an entire family died, waiting for help that never came during a war decades ago. Their names were erased from history because they were turned away from the shelters, and he becomes determined to make sure the world remembers them. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. He signed the papers on a Tuesday. The house was older than anyone in his family had ever been. 200 years of walls and floors and ceilings that had seen generations come and go. He was 71, and this was supposed to be his quiet place. Somewhere to finish out his years in peace. The garden was overgrown, weeds taller than his waist, vines that had claimed the back fence as their own. He started working on it the first weekend, pulling at the stubborn roots, clearing space for something new. That is when the shovel hit metal, not the soft thud of a rock, but a hollow clang that echoed. He brushed away the dirt with his hands. Rust covered every inch of it. A hatch, heavy, old, the kind of thing that was meant to stay hidden. He pulled at the handle, and it did not move. He tried again, harder this time. It groaned and shifted. One more pull and it swung open. The smell hit him first. Stale air, decay, dust that had not moved in decades. He shone his light down into the darkness. Steps led into the earth, steep and narrow. He hesitated. Every instinct told him to close it, to cover it back up and pretend he never found it. But curiosity won. It always does. He climbed down. Each step creaked under his weight. The walls were lined with stone, cold and damp. At the bottom was a small chamber, no bigger than a bedroom. And there they were, not alive, not for a very long time. A family, a mother, a father, 3 children. Their remains were still there, sitting against the wall as if they had just fallen asleep. But he knew better. He stumbled back, his heart pounding, his breath shallow. He climbed out of the chamber and called the authorities. They came quickly, investigators, historians, people with cameras and notebooks. They documented everything. The bodies were removed carefully, respectfully. And then the questions started. Who were they? How long had they been down there? Why had no one found them before? The answers came slowly, piece by piece, through old records and forgotten files. The family had lived in the house during the war, the one that tore the country apart decades ago. When the bombs started falling, people ran to the shelters, big concrete structures built to hold hundreds. But not everyone was let in. The family had tried. They stood at the gates with their children and begged. But they were turned away. Their skin was the wrong shade, their features too different. The officials told them to find somewhere else, somewhere that did not exist, so they came back to their home. The father had built the chamber years before, a backup plan, a place to hide if things got bad. They went down with blankets and water and the hope that the war would end quickly. It did not. The hatch was hidden under soil and weeds. No one knew they were there. No one came looking. They waited in the dark. Days turned into weeks. The supplies ran out. The air grew thin, and one by one they faded. The investigators found journals, writings on the walls. The mother had carved their names into the stone. She wrote about the children, how brave they were, how they did not cry even when they were hungry. The father had written too, about his regret, about the choice he had made to come back instead of fighting harder at the gates. The eldest child had scratched a message near the steps. Simple, words that broke everyone who read them. We are still here. But no one had heard. The story should have ended there. A tragic discovery. A moment of silence. But he could not let it go. He started digging into the records. He wanted to know why they were turned away. He found logs from the shelter, lists of people who were allowed in, lists of people who were not. The family's name was on the second list. Right at the top, there was a note beside it. Not eligible, no further explanation. Just 2 words that had sealed their fate. He reached out to the city, to the historical society, to anyone who would listen. He told them what he found. He demanded that the family be remembered, that their story be told. Most ignored him. Some dismissed it as ancient history, things that were too painful to revisit. But he kept pushing. He contacted journalists, he wrote letters, he stood in front of the city council and spoke until they had no choice but to hear him. Months passed. The pressure built. Finally, the city agreed to investigate. They opened the old files. They reviewed the policies that had been in place during the war. What they found was worse than anyone expected. The family was not the only one. There were others. Dozens of families who had been turned away. People who had died because they were deemed unworthy of protection. It had been systematic, deliberate. A policy written into the very structure of the shelters. Separate lists, separate rules. The city tried to keep it quiet, but he would not let them. He went to the media. He showed them the journals, the names carved into the stone, the message from the child. The story exploded. People were outraged. Protests filled the streets. Demands for accountability, for recognition, for an apology that was decades overdue. The officials had no choice. They issued a public statement, an acknowledgement of what had happened, an admission of guilt. They promised a memorial, a place where the names of the forgotten could be displayed, where their story would be told to every generation that came after. He attended the unveiling. It was a cold morning, the kind that bites at your skin. The memorial was simple, a wall of stone with names etched into its surface. The family's names were at the center, larger than the others. Below them was the child's message. We are still here. He stood in front of it for a long time. He thought about the father who built the chamber, the mother who carved their names, the children who waited in the dark. He thought about all the people who had been erased, who had died without anyone knowing, without anyone caring, and he made a promise that he would never let it happen again, that he would never stop telling their story. The memorial became a place of pilgrimage. Schools brought students to learn. Families came to pay their respects. The forgotten were forgotten no more. But for him, it was not enough. He turned the house into a museum. He restored the chamber and opened it to the public. People could walk down the same steps, see the same walls, read the same words. They could feel what it was like to be trapped, to be abandoned, to be left behind. He gave tours himself, every week. He told the story over and over. He did not let anyone leave without understanding what had happened, without feeling the weight of it. Years passed. He grew older. His hands shook when he climbed the steps. His voice grew weaker, but he never stopped, even when his body begged him to rest. Even when friends told him he had done enough. He could not stop, because they could not be forgotten again. One evening he sat in the garden, the same spot where he had found the hatch. It was covered now, sealed with glass so people could see, down into the chamber without disturbing it. He looked at the names etched into the stone below. He thought about the life he had lived, the things he had seen, the injustices he had ignored when he was younger. He wished he had fought sooner, spoken louder, cared more, but he was fighting now, and that had to count for something. The sun set behind the trees. The garden grew dark. He stood slowly and walked back to the house. Tomorrow there would be more visitors, more people who needed to hear the story, more names that needed to be spoken aloud, and he would be there. As long as he could stand, as long as he could speak, he would make sure they were remembered, because that was the only thing that mattered now. The only thing that ever really mattered. That when someone is erased from history, someone else fights to bring them back. That when the world tries to forget, someone refuses to let it happen. He had found them in the dark, and he had brought them into the light, and now the world would never let them fade again. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.